Hey, everybody, and welcome to Your Next. I'm your host, Jerome, and we are international again. I've got my new best friend from Canada, Julie Cole. How are you?
I'm doing great, Jerome. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy that I'm your new BFF from Canada.
Oh my gosh, I don't think I know anybody in Burlington, Ontario, except for you.
Well,
So
there
this is
you go.
going to
I'm
get
just
special
outside of
quick.
Toronto. So it is just outside of Toronto. So I'm sure you have people in Toronto.
I do. I
Yeah.
immediately comes to mind is my buddy Alan McLaren. He's a big YPO guy up there. But man, Julie, I've never actually seen somebody so warm via like messaging, like either like
Aw.
in LinkedIn DM or email. And so to see you in person, just it confirms all the things that I read as far as tone and energy. So I like to open up the show with just by asking simple questions. So you had an exit, huh?
Had an exit. Yeah. Yeah. Built up a company from the basement and 14 years in, did the exit, but we can get into all that. So it was an exciting time, lots learned through the process, and it actually went pretty smoothly.
Oh, that's rare. That's
Yeah.
we're gonna have to find out more about how you did
Yeah.
that. So was it literally started in a basement or is that just
It
conjecture?
was literally started in the basement. So here's what the business is. It's called Mabel's Labels. So Mabel's Labels, we sought to create a product that was actually missing from the market. It was just a dishwasher, microwave safe label for all the stuff kids lose. So parents would go on our website, type in their kiddo's name, pick a little cute icon, a color palette, and then we would make them. And then we would send them out in the mail within 24 hours. And then parents could label their bottles, their sippy cups, all the stuff going to school, the food containers. And it really was, our secret sauce was that it really was dishwasher microwave safe. I just had somebody send me a picture of their label. She's a teacher and she had one of her kids' old snack containers from 2007 and his name label is still on it. So that's what I'm talking about as being the secret sauce. So really, the business came about because me and my sister and two of our friends from college, we had a good product idea. We were actually young moms at the time. We were tired of losing all our kids' stuff and tired of trying to use permanent marker or masking tape to label things. So, like good entrepreneurial mamas, we came up with our product and did a lot of research and testing and then launched. And we started with just the one label that was a peel and stick. That's the dishwasher microwave one. And then we just kept rolling out more and more labeling products, like so we could label shoes and like peel and stick clothing labels and bag tags and allergy alerts and all sorts of different combos for camp and for day camp and sleepaway camp and school and all those things. So it really was quite a journey. And for me also, I do have 6 kids, and at the time I was an attorney, and I actually didn't think the traditional workforce was going to suit me any longer because my eldest child at the time got diagnosed with autism. And I really wanted to be able to advocate for him and make sure that I had all the programming in place and was able to attend meetings and do all the things I needed to do. So with this great business idea in our back pocket and the timing of my son's diagnosis, I said to my co-founders, hey, we've had a good idea. What do you think? And they're like, let's do this. And so we did. And we started literally in my sister's basement.
Okay. And so product distribution can be really difficult and
Sure.
getting critical mass and then there's even the manufacturing of it. Did you guys bootstrap this or was
We
this something?
bootstrapped this baby. So we bootstrapped this thing. And you know what? It wasn't that bad for a couple of reasons. There were 4 of us. So we had not only like 4 brains, 4 different skill sets, we have 4 different purses to dig into, right? So it did make the bootstrapping a little bit easier. And also keep in mind that the way this product works is that customers buy the product, we make the product, and we send it out. So it's not like I've got a lot of friends with businesses who their money's all tied up in their inventory. We're not like that. So it was very like cash flowy because the customers actually paid for it before we made the product, right? And of course, as the years have gone by, we know our cycle. We're like, okay, if we're going to go 10% this year, then we need to order this many more supplies. We have to do this many hires for summer camp season or back to school season. So we really know how our cycle works now and how to plan for that. So yes, we did bootstrap it and we did make the labels. We now have a 20,000 square foot production facility in Mabel's headquarters here. but also we have a production facility in California as well to take care of a lot of our West Coast US orders.
Okay. So wait, do you like
Mhm.
print it with a
We
computer? Like I
do.
okay.
We printed, and it's so funny you asked that, Jerome, because honestly, the first baby show I did, I can remember like all these dads coming up to me being like, huh, what's this? Oh, I can do these. I'm like, you go home and try. You go home and try and create off your printer something that will go through the dishwasher and the microwave, will be UV resistant. And then, of course, all the dads came back and bought my product.
Oh my
And we
god.
did a lot of research and development. We knew our market because we were our market, right? We wanted something very cute, very personalized. We knew our market spent a lot of money on their children's belongings and didn't want to lose their belongings. So we tested the materials. Like we had stuff sitting in our dishwasher for a year to make sure that it would be so durable. And so that in 2025, people could say, I've still got a label from 2007 that's working.
Okay. 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 Oh my so you're an attorney by training. And then did you just do lawyer stuff when you guys started?
lawyer, lawyer turned label maker. But it's so funny because people are always like, wow, do you regret doing law school and doing all that? Because it was hard, not gonna lie. But you know what? I always say, like, whatever skills you pick up along the way, you can adapt them and you can use them in anything you do. So I never have seen any education I got, any experiences I've had as any sort of a waste of time. They've all contributed to the growth, to the success of this business.
So, all right, there's 4 co-founders.
Correct.
It's hard enough with 2.
100%. Oh, I get it. Yeah. Yeah. No, it is. You're right. Because, like, as I said, we had a lot of brains come to the table. We had a lot of for financial banks to dig into when we were bootstrapping. To, I think where you're getting to here is like 4 feisty brains and lots of personalities and lots of opinions. So that was not without its challenges. And we had to work through a lot of that. We had to figure out who was doing what and had to find our roles and then make sure we had a business coach who was helping us navigate that. We always had to improve on our communication styles and make sure we understood how each other receives information and how they give information. So there was a lot of work. And it's funny, I was just interviewing, I do a LinkedIn Live series, and I was interviewing this guy, Jay Carls, who's quite a character. And he's co-founder of Midday Squares. And he started it with his sister and her husband. And since day one, they've always gone to a marriage counselor, the 3 of them, once a week to make sure that their relationship as business partners was good and that everything was getting addressed. And I love that they invested in themselves because if your relationships fall apart, what's the point? Especially if it's family, right?
So, how did you guys decide who was gonna do what?
Right.
Because that
Yeah.
just sounds
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. So I think like at certain times we all were doing everything. Like those early startup days in the basement, it was like everybody make the labels, everybody answer the phone, everybody do everything. But at the same time, we even had a little more defined roles then. Like we had one person who came from a financial background. So she was the one doing kind of the spreadsheets. We had one who came from a graphics background. So they were great for helping with the design. I'm very good with media and marketing and people. So, I could be the face of the brand and get out there and find these 6 kids. So I was connected to the mom community, right? So I was really, and I always have remained the face of the brand and that personal brand that's going out there and raising the profile because moms want to feel connected to the brands that they're buying from. They don't want to buy from nameless, faceless brands. So making those connections was really important. And we were out of my sister's basement. So she was always making sure production was on track. The label production was on track. But it did, I think eventually we did fall into where our natural skills are. And we also had to make sure that we were doing it fairly. So no particular person was like feeling like very put upon, like they were doing too much and somebody else wasn't doing a lot. So we tried to make sure that there was an even division of labor while also honoring the fact that those things ebb and flow. We have 13 kids between us. So somebody would have a baby or somebody had 6 kids and we'd all just tag team for each other. So we had to be very mindful and cognizant of the fact that we wanted a culture that lent space for us to raise our families, since this was the reason the business started, right? To create that flexibility.
So, when did you know you actually had something?
Yeah,
Because I think a lot of people who create
yeah.
product are like, I don't know, maybe.
It's scary. That is scary stuff. Like there are a lot of times where I'd be lying in bed, raising these kids, making labels in my sister's basement till 2 a.m. and thinking, what if this doesn't fly? And, I'm going to say that we had some pretty early indicators that the product made sense to the market. So often when you're bringing a product to market, you actually have to educate the market that they need your product. So there's this whole education piece. Whereas for us, like once like a mom saw a kid's water bottle at soccer or ballet and it had a child's name label on it, and the mom was like, what is that? And that. So word of mouth really did its thing. Like this is like 22 years ago, it was pre-social media, pre like the mommy bloggers and all that, like before we could create these online communities. But we did have some very early PR hits. We got featured on, this, it was called Daily Candy Kids. It was this very early, like they do an e-newsletter out of California on a product they discovered that they loved. And somebody submitted us. And we were just like that small business one day going, what the heck? What is Daily Candy? Why is everybody ordering? So we had some nice early hits from media. And I was always doing like back in the day, like pitching morning TV shows about, let me talk about this like mom who has a kid with autism who started this business in the basement. And we're storytellers. And I think that's what every good brand does and that's what differentiates you in the market. And when you have competitors, it's your storytelling. So we always knew that instinctively and went along with that. So we did have some early indicators. I guess the fact that once we launched, we never really had to dig into our pockets. Like we started making money right away. I remember we wanted to upgrade one piece of our technology and we thought, oh gosh, okay, we're going to lease this. And if we don't make sales, it's going to cost us each like $400 a month. We're like, how are we going to do it? And we are all like, okay, held hands. Can we do the $400 each a month if we have to? And we're like, okay, let's do it. And we never had to. Because we're always innovating and bringing out the best technology and creating innovative product, it just kept selling. So we were able to always just keep reinvesting in the business without having to dig too deep into our pockets.
So that suggests that everybody was an equal owner as well.
It was. Yes. Yes. We were at 25% each. I know, which again can be, you're shaking your head. I know it can be a recipe for disaster. But do keep in mind, this was my sister and also these two friends that we went to college with. This is funny. One met my brother through us and I have a young uncle through us, and they married them. So they were also family. So we knew each other very well. And I do always warn, like, you got to know who you're getting in bed with, like whether it's a company that is your supplier, whether it's a team member, whether it's staff, whether it's a co-founder, like you need to make sure that you're aligned on this core values and that all that stuff checks out. Because if you think marital divorce is hard, like you should try business partner divorce, right? Nobody wants to do that.
Yeah, it's tanked so many businesses or forced them to
Yep.
sell at a
Yep.
valuation lower than they
Yeah.
needed to. It's one of those 4 unexpected causes for a business owner exiting. So this is unreal. It's like everything they tell you not to do, you guys are doing it, and it keeps going. And so you you hire people, I assume. I don't think you guys do all the work for the entire
Yeah, no, we did. Our first hires were the worker bees, the people who could make the labels. We were in the basement, and then eventually, like, okay, we can't have employees go into this dingy basement anymore. So we told, rather than getting a production facility at that point, we told my sister to buy a bigger house with a bigger basement, and she did. So we moved there for a while, and then in about 2007, we moved to where we are now, and we remain in that space, and that's the 20,000 square foot facility, which is Mabel's Labels headquarters.
And then how does the California facility come into play?
Well, because we do so much business and so many of our customers are from the West and from the US, and a lot of people want made in Canada, a lot of people want made in US. So we want to make sure that we're providing that and we have enough business to make it worth our while.
So did one of the 4 of you have to go down for that, or everybody
So now,
stayed?
yeah, so I'm the only remaining partner since the exit. I'm the only one who is still with the business. But like we have a staff team of, even when we sold, we had a staff team of like 50 people, right? So we have a production manager, and our production manager goes down to California back and forth to make sure operations are going well there. But we've got a great team out there as well. But we want to make sure like all our processes are the same and that our quality is the same. So we definitely, but there's no need for me to go. This is something our production manager and product development managers can do.
So getting out of doing the day to day, the
Yeah.
actual creation of it. And so, all right, now we get into the gritty because you're the only one that stayed on post
Mm,
exit. So, like, how does that conversation go between the partners? Like, did somebody
right.
just reach out unsolicited and say, "Hey, we want to buy you"?
Yeah. Okay. So the timing was weird and interesting. So we had the business for about 14 years and we were at the point where we're like, okay, we got to make some changes because we're still like the four of us co-CEOing and we're like, this is getting a little cumbersome. Like we need, and one of the risks with the four of us, and this happened was we did silo a bit. So like you instinctively get protective of your department and your people. So it might be like the marketing partner may have been like, okay, well, we need to launch this new product because we need something to talk about. I need to be able to send out press releases. Julie's got to be able to talk about this morning TV. But then the product development and production partner might be like, hey, look, you know what? Until we have enough money to make some more hires, we're run ragged, no more new products. So everybody's fighting for their department, which can be very isolating and not the best thing overall. So we knew that this was happening and we're like, okay, maybe we need one person to oversee the best interests of the company as a whole so that the siloing doesn't happen. But then who do we want that person to be? Like, do we want it to be one of us? Do we have the know-how? And we felt like we took the business this far, but maybe it's actually time to get somebody in who has run a business before. We've done very well, but maybe it's time to get an external CEO to come on to take us to next level. So we were thinking about all these things. And like we had just rebuilt our new website. We had done a lot of investing and thinking about what was next. And we get a call out of the blue from Avery, which is like an industry giant, right? And they're like, look, we've been keeping an eye on you guys. Can we take you for dinner and have a conversation? And we're like, yeah, no problem. We can have a conversation. So that was July. And let's just say the conversation went well. And we closed at the end of December, which is, yeah, very, very fast. Very fast.
So you said it so casually, and I was looking around my office because I know that I have Avery labels in a drawer here somewhere. Is
Sure.
that the Avery we're talking about?
That's the Avery you're talking about. But they were smart because they wanted Mabel's labels, but they weren't going to go in and like Averify it. What they wanted was like this amazing brand that we created. So we're still where we are. It's still the same team. It's still like very little has actually changed, except actually we have a little bit more support and we have access to HR resources that we wouldn't have otherwise and things like that. So it's been really great for the company and our team. But that was, yeah, so that's now like 8 or 9 years ago. Like, it's shocking how long that is. So at the time, to your point about the partners, so right away, one partner was like, I'm out. I want to do other things. And she just had a surprise baby. So she's like, I got to spend some time with this new baby I wasn't planning. So she was like, I'm out. And that was my sister. And then so another partner thought she would hang around and then she was like, nah, I don't want to do this one because she was very involved operationally. She's like, I don't really want to do this anymore. I'm going to get into like, she's doing like coaching and like helping out other entrepreneurs. And we like to share what we've learned. I know for me, one of the things was when we signed, one of the conditions was that I'd stay on for a year. And that's often a good thing because you want that that historical knowledge to stick around for a while and have a smooth transition. And quite frankly, like you still love your business. Mabel's label still felt like a baby of mine. So I didn't mind making sure like I stuck around so that I could help with the smooth transition. And then also one of my other partners, so me and Trisha Mumby, we both stayed on. She stayed on for a few years as the general manager. And then a few years ago, I think maybe 5 years ago, I don't even know now, she was like, okay, I'm done. I'm ready to move on and do other things. So she's left. So I'm last man standing.
Okay. So we started down this path of professionalizing and bringing in an external CEO, and
Right.
that got derailed, if I
Yes.
understand this correctly. And instead of that, you guys got acquired.
Correct.
And 2 people left immediately, and
Yep.
then another person left after the fact, and you're still rocking and rolling, doing the same
I'm still loving it.
responsibilities you had
Yeah,
pre-sale?
except it's a little bit different. Like really, when my business partner, when she stayed on and took the role of GM, that was great because then we did have that one person keeping an eye on the full thing. And then so they really let me zone into my zone of genius, which is talking to people, speaking at conferences, doing media, writing, and getting the Mabel word out there and connecting and connecting that mom community and being on socials and that sort of thing. So for me, maybe like I think a big part of it being a successful and smoother transition for me than I think typical is that I'm not as involved operationally. Yes, I'm on the leadership team, right? But I'm not sampling material or figuring out, I'm not like we have a product development team at Mabel's Labels, right? Like we have people and they report not to me, but to our general manager, who actually was somebody who came on Mabel's Labels in 2009 as a contractor. And I love her. And I love that somebody who used to report to me, I now report to. And it's awesome because she knows this company like the back of her hand. So, yeah, so that's how it all went. And like I said, I think it's smoother for me because I'm like the personal brand, using my personal brand to elevate the professional brand. So I'm not so involved operationally, although I am on the leadership team. I don't have a ton of people reporting to me. I don't have all of that nonsense. I get to just focus on spreading the Mabel love, spreading the Mabel word.
Chief evangelist. So
100%. Or it's Jake Carls calls it like rainmaker, right? Yeah.
bring it in, baby. So,
Yeah.
man, there's so many places I wanna go. All right, all right, all right, all right. Here we go,
Yeah.
here we go, here we go, here we
Yeah.
go. So, it it how'd you know what to sell it for?
Okay. Well, right. Like that's a really great question. And because this all happened so fast, right? So generally you're going to sell it for like your EBITDA times whatever, or like roughly it'll be like, okay, how much do you do in sales a year times that by 5 or whatever. Like there's like formulas that are used, right? So the thing for us is that we weren't planning on selling. So we weren't like having a big year of like ginormous sales because we were doing things like investing. Like we were laying down the groundwork that we would pay off 2 years down the road. Like we were doing a lot of product development. As I said, we spent $100,000 on a new website. Like we were doing all sorts of that. So actually, when they came to us with the number, we were like, it's too low because of course our EBIT is a bit low because this is not like, so if anybody is going to sell, you want to make sure that your numbers are looking good so that you get top dollar and you get what your business is worth. So we just went back and said, hey, you're going to be reaping the benefits of all our investment that we're doing this year, 2 years down the road. So yeah, this is not the formula that's fair for right now. And they totally understood. So we got to the number that we wanted. So there was that. That was one of the things that we wanted to make sure would be right, because you don't want to give away all your work. There's a lot of sweat equity that goes into that. So the price has to be right. I think the other thing too is that we want to make sure we weren't going to lose the company culture. We weren't going to lose the brand of Mabel's Labels because that's what was truly special. And we didn't want to lose our community. So that was all remaining the same too. And like at first we were like, oh, Avery is an American company, but Avery is actually owned by CCL, which is a Canadian company. So, at the end of the day, the conversations went well. We got to the number. We went through, of course, due diligence and all that. And I do warn people, due diligence is where you can lose money, right? Because if they take a peek under the covers and they're like, actually, there's a lot of dirty laundry here. So we're going to knock $1 million off that price or a couple million off that price. So you want to make sure, I think for anybody, like keep your housekeeping in order. And we were very good at that. We always had our contracts, we had everything tidy. So it was very smooth due diligence. They didn't discover anything. So that we got through that process with no problem. And then they didn't come back saying we want to pay you less or anything like that. So keep your housekeeping in order, I would say always.
So you didn't have an advisor helping you guys through the process?
Oh yeah, we did. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. We got somebody. Well, first of all, I think our accountant was particularly smart. I think it's very important for entrepreneurs and small business owners to make sure they surround themselves with professionals who they trust and who are smarter than they are in some areas. So our accountant actually was he had been a business advisor along the way as well. And he was a friend of actually one of our professors from university and who connected us to him. And his name's Bill. And even like 2 years before we even had the offer to sell, Bill started saying, hey, you know what? I think we should set up some holding companies for you gals and let's set up some trust funds for these kids. And he was already thinking ahead because he's like, okay, they're at this 12 years. He knows how these things work. And he thought, in case they go to sell, if they do come into money, I want to make sure that we have places to put this money that's tax effective, right? So having like smart professionals around you to help you with your personal planning is super important, but also with your professional planning. So we hired somebody to do the negotiations, and that was smart for a couple of reasons. One is that we didn't leave anything on the table. We don't know how to, we're not professional negotiators. Like the woman that we hired is a mergers and acquisitions lawyer. This is what she does. And she's actually super passionate about women entrepreneurs and them getting top dollar. So she really fought for us and she loved us and she was passionate about it. So that's one reason I think you should always get somebody to negotiate this deal for you, is because you don't want to leave any money on the table. But the other reason is because as I transitioned and I'm still there 8, 9 years later, well, how awkward would that have been if things got very messy in the negotiations and I offended them somehow or they offended me and we got a distaste for each other and then we went on and now they're my boss and I work for them? That can make for a very awkward relationship. So I think it's great to have that third party do all that tough negotiating so that you guys can keep your relationships intact.
Wow. So don't go it alone is
Don't go
step
it
one.
alone. No,
Use
no.
professionals is step
Yeah.
two. And so you talked about personal planning, but that was more along the lines of finance or finance.
Mhm,
I think most people who are exiting, especially if they do it in 6 months,
mhm.
haven't actually spent the time decoupling their identity from the business.
Yes.
So there's at least 4 stories
Yeah.
about post-exit fulfillment and
Yeah.
identity after the business. It's
Mm.
almost like the business had 4 moms and now the kid is going off
Yeah.
to college. Can I don't know if they're okay with you sharing details about them, but, like,
Right.
did people struggle with what we call the founder's exit paradox
For
post-exit?
sure, for sure. And well, first of all, my sister didn't. She always was sort of like, she loved Mabel's label. She did her work. She was amazing, so committed, but she was very family first. So when she exited and we spent time, like she didn't identify herself as Mabel's labels. And of course, I stayed on. I do my sister-in-law, Julia, she had a bit of a harder time because her identity was very much tied in with it. And she talks about how when she left, she was like, now what? Right? Like, what am I going to, who am I? What am I going to do if I don't do this? So she had to do some like work and some thinking and figure out what she wanted to do next and all of that jazz. So she had a rougher exit. And of course, my other partner stayed on for a few years. So she didn't go through that at all. But everybody's landed what they where they are and they're happy where they are. But yeah, I think a couple of things are really important. I see this too with like, say, moms, like if they devote everything to their kids and their kids go off to college, then they're like, who am I if I'm not that? Or like an athlete, they get an injury and they can't play football anymore. It's like, who am I if I'm not a football player? And like that entrepreneur, like, who am I if I don't like run Mabel's labels? Like, who am I that? And so I think you have to make sure that you always protect yourself and you always have other things going on. Like we all had families, we all had kids, we all have like, so don't like lose sight of like your other interests, other things you might have going on, other friends. So you want to make sure that keep your identity like not too tied to your business and start adding things in, like start doing maybe mentoring or join a board or do things like that so that when you exit, you don't all of a sudden be like, now what? So you want to make sure that you're contributing and feeling fulfilled and doing that sort of stuff because you're absolutely right. It can be a really tough time for somebody who exits.
A lot of times when people exit, the thing that shocks them the most is the fact that many of their relationships either end or change pretty dramatically. Is that an experience that you saw happen?
Like with my sister, we're neighbors. We own a cottage together. Like we're really, really close. And we are with the others as well, but everybody's busy doing their own thing. Right. And it's like anything when it was hilarious because like when we were starting Mabel's Labels, it was all we talked about. And of course, all our like young cousins were getting married and we would be like at the wedding, the four of us off in a corner talking about Mabel's Labels. Like we were obsessed with it. Right. But now we've all moved on to other things. So it just, the dynamic definitely does change after an exit because you don't have the same common interest anymore. You're not in communication about things every day. It's like we don't have the same baby anymore. Our baby's grown up. And so there's no need for us to really like connect in the same way. Right.
I found that people struggle to find new connections, and
Right.
that's really interesting. I think the older we get, the more family obligations we get, creating friendships, relationships, it becomes more challenging, especially when you move in the workplace because, that's where most people spend the majority of their time. And so it's always fascinating to hear how people navigated that. So you've, well, 6 kids, it's hard to put yourself completely in a business with that. But how are people or how did people find, you said they're fulfilled and they're landing wherever they landed. Was
Mhm.
there a process that they went through? Like how they figure out what their next was?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Like, I think I know with my sister, like, she just exited the business and then she's always been interested in real estate. So she did a couple of courses around that. And she has some properties. So she's managing her properties. So she just fell into like like her life stuff and her interests. And keep in mind, like, everybody's got their money that they got from selling the business, right? So there's not also this like desperation to find employment. It's more about finding employment that fulfills you. So, I like my one partner, Julie, she did courses in like coaching and like so she become a certified business coach. So now she does that and she likes working with other entrepreneurs. And then the other one was with Mabel's for a while, but she's actually just seems to be doing a lot of traveling and doing like mentoring. And I think entrepreneurs generally love small business and love entrepreneurs. So we're all quite happy to be doing mentoring and connecting with local business communities. And I do a lot of speaking engagements. I have a lot of mentees. I'm meeting with one tomorrow to go through her strategic planning. And so I think we find our community still within that small business, that entrepreneurial world.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's good. That's good. That's good. And
Yeah.
so, do you think you guys would have had the success you had with the first offer being the offer that closed and structuring the deal in a way where it was tax advantageous
Yeah.
and people actually got to do the things they wanted to do post exit that they wanted to do? Some people wanted to continue, some people wanted to walk
Yeah.
away. Had you not had a good group of advisors surrounding you?
Yeah, having a group of advisors was definitely key. I do feel like also it just the timing of it, us being on that point where we're like, what next? Like, what do we want to do next? And it did feel like when this came along, it was like, oh, we weren't considering that option just yet, but we are 14 years in and we do need to do something. And it just, the timing, everything just worked out so well. And the fact that we loved who was acquiring us. I still work very closely with the gal who is Allison from Avery. We still work very closely together, and it's just been so great. The other thing I did want to warn too, and this was an advantage, I think, of having the four of us as well. I think what can happen is that when somebody is going to sell their business, like, you need to understand that it is like a full-time job. Like, you're working with the person who wants to do the acquisition or that company, and you're doing due diligence, and you're preparing, and you're meeting, and you're doing all of these things. And often what I found with entrepreneurial friends or small business friends is when they sell or when they think they're gonna sell, they can get left at the altar, right? These things don't generally go smoothly. And what I've seen happen is that the deal doesn't go through, and then they've also, because it's been so time consuming and absorbing of their time, they've taken off their eye off the ball of running the business. So the business is actually now worth less. They're producing less, all of that. So don't get so consumed with the acquisition that you're not also running your company. And I do feel like having the four of us, there is an advantage to that because we put Mumby in charge of managing the communication and the relationship with Avery, where we could still run the business in a way that it was very profitable and still worth something in case it didn't go through. And maybe a couple years down the road, we wanted to look somewhere else or look at a new buyer or something like that. But it's very, very dangerous because it's incredibly consuming, time consuming, energy, all of that. So you want to make sure that you're still focused on growing your business during that time.
Yeah, we call it deal fatigue.
Yeah, for sure.
Some
Deal
people, it's a
fatigue.
strategy, right? The
Yeah.
strategy is to wear you down, so you'll agree to whatever terms they wanna offer you, and they get a better deal, and you don't really have a choice on whether you're in or
Because you're
out.
so exhausted, right? And you're just done. You don't even like the thought of having to go through the process again, right? Yeah.
Man, Julie, I this just makes me happy.
Oh, yay.
We were talking a little bit beforehand, and you're like, "Do you have kids?" I was like, "Yeah, I got 2 girls," and so the
Yeah.
thought that my daughters, right, sisters, could
Yeah.
build something in
I
one of their
know.
basements and then get to scale,
Yeah.
right, and then exit it, and somebody who's connected to it wants to continue, the other can go off and do other amazing things. It just, to me, gives hope out there when there's not a whole lot of story of women founded companies going to scale and then having a nice
Yeah. And I
big
mean,
exit.
and women founded companies, like we're really contributing to the economy and we get only like 4% of like funding. So women are making a mark. Your daughters are could definitely do something awesome. And because it's a changing time and women are incredibly entrepreneurial, especially because a lot of us are trying to balance our families. And although entrepreneurship does give you flexibility, I often joke that flexibility didn't get my work done for me. Like I was like, it was long hours, right? It was hard work. And I do feel like people I talk often about how people romanticize entrepreneurship. They think it's all going to be book deals and TED Talks and all that. It looks a lot like being pregnant with your fourth kid in a basement making labels till 2 a.m., right? There's no like putting the kids to bed, pouring a glass of wine and binging Netflix. Like that just, I couldn't even lie down with the kid because I was afraid I'd fall asleep and lose 4 hours of valuable work time. Plus, there were six of them. Who are you going to pick you're going to lie down with, right? Who's that kind of time?
Oh my gosh. So, we love to wrap these episodes up by asking, because we covered so much ground
Yeah.
today. What's the one thing you think the listener should take away from this episode?
Oh, yeah. I think maybe what's always worth thinking about is that, and I don't know, we didn't necessarily do this, but I think even when you start your company, you should be thinking about your exit because is it going to be a legacy exit? Are you going to leave it to somebody or to your kids? Or are you going to sell it? Because you're actually going to manage the business a little bit differently depending on what your exit is. So don't be afraid to be thinking about the long-term strategy, even though you're in that early building, scaling stage. You've got to be thinking strategically. You've got to be thinking about the business and that whole, if you're not working on the business and you're so busy in the weeds working in the business, then nobody is. That's your job. That's your job.
That's so good. I think you gotta begin with the end in mind, and that's exactly what you just offered to us. So, ladies and gentlemen, you heard it from Julie herself. Successful exit. We didn't talk about the number, but I can tell you it's a nice, big, juicy one, and you should absolutely be inspired, and sometimes people use their family as an excuse. They say, "Oh, well, I got the kids, I can't," and Julie's family is part of the reason why she had to. And it's very interesting that she mentioned flexibility because the discipline is what made things work and happen. And I think people confuse flexibility for a lack of discipline. Making your business do what it's going to do is not because you're washing dishes or looking at TV in the middle of the day and going to bed early every night. Like that, those are not the things that happen, especially early in the company. Now, as it matures and it grows and there's more people involved, yeah, you might have some release of that time, but your time and your money, it's going to be all hands on deck. And then energy, all hands on deck in the beginning. And so, That's why we call it chief everything officers when you first start the company. So, Julie, thank you again for sharing this wonderful journey with us.
Oh, thanks so much, Jerome. Really enjoyed talking to you. And of course, if anybody wants to connect, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm all the places, mabelslabels.com. And if you go to mabelslabels.com/Julie Cole, that's where you can find all of my stuff.
All right. To the
Awesome.
listeners, your dreams should be real. We'll catch you on the next episode.